7th death anniversary. He passed away in 2018, February 22nd. And while at Kalalgoda, we actually share some merits to him and transfer some merits after the Dhamma sermon. So with some gratitude to him, we can start the concept and reality book. And I invite someone to start the reading from where we have stopped.
Bhante, we stopped at this paragraph, so shall I start from the top this page?
Yeah. Fine.
If you say that purity does not arise from weaves, learning, knowledge, holy vows, and ascetic practices, so said Margandhya. And also if you say that it does not arise in the absence of weaves, learning, knowledge, holy vows, and ascetic practices, then I consider that your teaching is foolish, for some arrive at purity through weaves. A detailed exposition of the validity of this apparently contradictory position occurs in the Rathavinita Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya in the form of a dialogue between Sariputta and Punnamantani Putta. The simile of the relay of 7 chariots, by which Punna illustrates the inner consistency of the 7 stages of purity, will serve to drive home the twin principles of relativity and pragmatism. It is as though, brother, while King Pasenadi was staying in Savatthi, something to be done urgently should arise in Saketa, and 7 relay chariots would be arranged for him. Then, brother, King Pasenadi of Kosala, having left Savatthi by the palace gate, might mount the first chariot in the relay, and by means of the first chariot in the relay, he would reach the second chariot in the relay, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and by means of the 7th chariot in the relay, he would reach the palace gate in Saketa. Even so, brother, purity of moral habits is of purpose as far as purity of mind. Purity of mind is of purpose as far as purity of view. Purity through crossing over doubt. Purity of knowledge and insight into the way and what is not the way. Purity of knowledge and insight into the cause. Purity arising from knowledge and insight. Purity arising from knowledge and insight is of purpose as far as utter nibbana without attachment. Brother, the holy life under the Lord is lived for the purpose of utter nibbana without attachment. It appears that the difference in approach between early Buddhism and the Majjhimika system towards the problem of concepts hinges on what might be called a subtle shift of emphasis in the interpretation of the term sunya and atta.
One second. Actually, here we are encountering a very interesting sutta, what we call the Rathavinita Sutta. So the discussion happened between Venerable Mahapunamantani Putta and Sariputta. And so the point is a kind of a pragmatic as well as a relative application. In one sense, it is quite practical, quite pragmatic, and on the other hand, all what we are using are fairly relative. We can't say that we are using a particular skill forever, but that particular skill is there to reach another level. And once we reach this new level, you might not need that previous kind of a skill because already you have reached the next level. And once you are further in the next level, once you are further developing the next level, you may reach another level. And once you reach that particular new level, you might not need the previous level. So likewise, it's a fairly pragmatic approach as well as a relative approach. So the interesting simile given in the Rathavinita Sutta is how King Kosala traveling from Savatthi to the Saketa. Savatthi to the Saketa seems to be a long distance. And when he's traveling, unlike today, they didn't have any, say, airplanes or trains or electric vehicles or any of those, but they have to use a chariot, a horse chariot. So when they are using a horse chariot, so that long distance is impossible for a single horse chariot to complete. So they are keeping a series of horse chariots at different places in between. So you start with one horse chariot from Savatthi, and from one you are reaching the second one. The second one is ready now, and the horses there are also new. They are not exhausted, and now you are using the second chariot. Now you go to the third chariot. So once you reach the third chariot, you can abandon the second. Now you can get into the third chariot. Now you are traveling through the third chariot. So likewise, ultimately you reach the Saketa using the seventh horse chariot. Now you can see in a way, the kind of pragmatic approach, as well as the one's usage is quite relative. Where you are, in your practice, where you are. So depending on that, the mechanisms that we use and the different kinds of techniques what we use, different applications, all that are quite relative depending on where you are, and they are pragmatic. So the very, very interesting phenomena highlighted in this particular sutta, and say now Buddha gives this solution, what we call for the spiritual development. So for example, Sila Visuddhi. So depending on the morality. So once you complete the morality, it is causing to develop the purity of the mind. And once the purity of the mind is someone's there's an echoing happens. Someone, I don't know why. Okay, so once someone used the purity of the mind, is capable of doing the purity of the views, Ditti Visuddhi. And after one is completing the purity of the views, now slowly he reaches the Kankha Vitarana Visuddhi, where he is able to abandon different kinds of views and different kinds of perplexities or different kinds of doubts. Kankha Vitarana Visuddhi. And as one is continuing that, now he arrived the Magga Magga Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. One can know what is the path, what is not the path. So kind of a proper verification is now can select only the proper path. Magga Magga Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. He know what is the path and what is not the path, what is the way and what is not the way. And once he is continuing that, and then he is arriving what we call the Patipada Jnana Dassana Visuddhi, where he know about the kind of a practice which is kind of a knowledge and insight arising because of the practice. Purity arises because of the knowledge and insight. Now one is developing fair amount of insight, fair amount of wisdom is there, some knowledge is there. As a result of that, now the purity of the mind happens. Now as one is continuing that, now slowly his burning is reduced, and further and further his understanding is growing. One is reaching the Jnana Dassana Visuddhi, translated as purity arising from the insight, and that is actually for the completion of the Nibbana, arrival of the Nibbana. Jnana Dassana Visuddhi is for the arriving of the Nibbana. So likewise, it's a kind of a relative and pragmatic scheme that the Buddha is explaining in this what we call the Ratavinita Sutta, the Buddha's whole path is explained by Venerable Sariputta, telling, okay, this is this kind of a pragmatic and relative approach that Buddha has taught. So, very, very interesting part. So, in a way, we can, so when you are using the lower rungs, those are necessary for you to reach the second rung or the upper rung. And once you are at the upper, then the lower rung. Otherwise, you can't move forward, move up. Now, as you move up, all the lower rungs are slowly abandoned. But they were helpful for you to come up, rise up. And once you arrive there, wherever your destination, all the rungs are not necessary. Even the ladder is not necessary because you have reached the path. You have reached the destination. So the destination is the Nibbana, Anupada Parinibbana, where you are arriving the Nibbana, which is entirely free from any attachment. So the freedom from any attachment, freedom from any grasping, any craving, so that is the kind of the culmination. So one can't reach it immediately. You need a kind of a systematic approach, a pragmatic approach, a relative approach, and that is what using a relay of chariots. And similarly, the path is also a kind of a one after the other. In one type of practice is helping to reach another level. And once one is developing it, you reach another level. When you are stabilizing there, consolidating there, developing there, you reach another level. So likewise, it's a very pragmatic approach. So this is something that we need to. So what you understand at one level, what are the skills you gain at one level, might not be the same kind of thing when you are talking about it at another level. Your understanding is growing, your faculties are growing, your realization is deepening. So therefore, it's a fairly dynamic approach. Okay, we can move forward, Saman.
Namaste. It appears that the difference in approach between early Buddhism and Madhyamika system towards the problem of concepts hinges on what might be called a subtle shift of emphasis in the interpretation of the term sunya and atta. In the part sunya given by the Buddha himself in reply to the following question of Ananda, Sunyo loko tibante vucchati. Kittavatānuko bante sunyo lokoti vucchati. Yasmachako Ananda sunyam attenava attenyenava tasma
attenyenava
attenyenava Yasmachako Ananda sunyam attenava attenyenava Tasma sunyo lokoti attenyenava.
Attenyenava. Yeah.
Takunko Ananda sunyam attenava attenyenava rupa chakku viññānam. Chakku sampasso sunyo attenava attenyenava. Ve yampidam manosampassapacchaya uppajjati vedaitam sukham va dukkham va adukkama sukham va tampi sunyam attenava attenyenava. Void is the world. Void is the world, they say. O Lord, pray, Lord, how far does this saying go? Because the world is void of the self, Ananda, or of what belongs to the self, therefore it is said, void is the world, and what, Ananda, is void of the self or of what belongs to the self. I, visual objects, eye consciousness, eye contact, and whatever feeling, happy, unhappy, or neutral, that arises due to mind contact, that too is void of the self or of what belongs to the self. The world is called void in the sense that it is devoid of a self or of anything belonging to a self. It must be noted that the world is in this definition corresponds to the totality of sense experience based on the six senses. The implication is therefore that no element of experience can be regarded as one's self or as belonging to oneself. Atta has to be taken in its subjective sense as the notion of a soul or an ego. Its characteristic is the power to own and control. The Buddha has clarified this fact in the very first sermon he delivered on the characteristics of anatta, Anatta Lakkana Sutta. Body, monks, is not self. Now where this body self? Monks, this body would not tend to sickness, and one might get the chance of saying, in regard to body, let body become thus for me, let body not become thus for me. But inasmuch, monks, as body is not self, therefore body tends to sickness, and one does not get the chance of saying, in regard to body, let body become thus for me.
Yeah, fine.
Let body become thus for me, let body not become thus for me. Feeling is not self. Perception is not self. Preparations are not self. Consciousness is not self. What do you think about this, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Lord. But is that which is impermanent painful or pleasurable? Painful, Lord. But is it fit to consider that which is impermanent painful of a nature of change, as this is mine, this am I, this is myself? It is not, Lord. Is feeling, perception, preparations, consciousness. Wherefore, monks, whatever is body, past, future or present, or internal or external, or gross or subtle, or low or excellent, whether it is far or near, all body should by means of right wisdom be seen as it really is. Thus, it is not mine. This am I not. This is not myself. Whatever, feeling, perception, preparations, consciousness. Thus, the main prong of attack is levelled at the concept of the soul as the controlling agent who is capable of experiencing happiness, which necessarily has to be permanent in order to be perfect. It is true that what gives rise to this notion is the idea of permanence or substantiality, but this latter is significantly rendered by the term nature. The illusion of substantiality is linked with the psychological impulse of the happiness, sukha, which in its turn sustains the illusion of the ego, atta. Now, Madhyamika system often seems to stress this notion of substantiality underlying the illusion of an Atman, thereby giving an objective twist to that word.
Okay, one moment. Yeah, one moment, Saman. We are now getting to another area. So, actually, you all may be familiar with the Anatta Lakkana Sutta. And there Buddha highlights the notion of non-self or the teaching of the non-self. So one argument he clearly made there is that if this body is myself, then basically I should have some control. Now that is why we say this is my body. This belongs to me, or the body is directly I am. So likewise, with respect to the body, we have some kind of notion, some kind of a belief. So this body belongs to me. But the interesting point is, if it is belong to me, I should be able to control it because it belongs to me. I should be able to control it as I wish. But without my wish, without my preference, without my like, it gets sick, it become old, and it even die. So if it belongs to you, how it can happen? So this is the kind of an argument that Buddha made here. So in that sense, you can understand, okay, I have no control over this body. Even though I am saying it is my body, that is wrong to say. It's not worthy and it is not proper to say like that, because the body does not belong to the way I want. Without my intention, without my permission, or against my will, body becomes sick, body become old, maybe weary, and ultimately it dies, which I didn't expect, which I don't want. Typically, I like to be kind of healthy every time. I like to be young every time. I don't want to get old. And I want to live longer. So this is my intention. But neglecting my intention, neglecting my like, so the body is behaving the way it wants. So with this argument, Buddha argues, telling, okay, this body is not self. You can't say it is a self. You can't say it belongs to you. You can't say it is under your control, because it is entirely working on its own kind of a criteria. So similarly, he argues about the feelings. Say different feelings are there. So we want, say, pleasurable feelings every time. We want to get rid of all the painful feelings every time. We might be bored about the equanimous feelings. So we prefer to have more pleasurable feelings. So this is the typical view, ambition that anyone is having. Now, but anyway, even though such kind of an ambition, such kind of a desire is available in one's mind, so the feelings are behaving at an entirely different way. When you are expecting happiness, what is arising may be unhappiness. When you are expecting happiness to last for a long time, it quickly disappears. And when you are expecting happiness, maybe the unhappiness may be arising. When you want unhappiness to quickly disappear, it may last for a long time. So likewise, the behavior of the feelings are beyond your control, beyond your wish. So with that argument, Buddha say, okay, these feelings are also non-self. Similarly, the perceptions, similarly, the mental formations, similarly, the consciousness. All these 5 aggregates are beyond our control. We can't say they are myself, because they are not going to obey me. They are not going to go or behave in line with my wishes or my kind of goals, my objectives. So they are actually very much like independent from my view, independent from my wish, independent of my ambitions. They behave the way they want. So then we become kind of helpless, because even though we say that these aggregates belong to me, so that is an illusion, that is a delusion, because they are dependent on so many other factors. So when those factors are changing, those causes are changing, these resultant aggregates are also changing. I have no control over them. So I can't say these aggregates are me, myself, belong to me. So likewise, this Anatta Lakkana Sutta, in one sense, highlighting the anatta, the doctrine of the non-self. And one part of anatta is actually the sunyata, where it is devoid of any kind of an atman, any kind of a self. Whatever the experience, whatever kind of so-called sense objects or so-called faculties, none of them are having any kind of a substantial self, a lasting self, or what belongs to self. Sunyamidang attenava attaniyenava. So basically, sunyang attenava attaniyenava basically means that the whole world is completely empty of a self and what belongs to a self. So this is a very, very interesting part actually, the doctrine of anatta. And on the other hand, we need to understand that the doctrine of anatta has to be applied only when we are capable, only when we are there, almost like, only when we are capable to use it. If we are trying to immaturely applying it, can lead to wrong repercussions or adverse repercussions. So therefore, even though it's a very interesting and fairly profound teaching, if we are not ready to apply it, then we better avoid it. Because no point of using such a weapon when we are not capable. Suppose that you are going to use a really sharp knife in a battle. So if you don't have any training with it, if you are not capable, then using that tool can be dangerous, can be harmful, even to yourself. So similarly, we can't use the teaching of the anatta at a premature level. And it may be during our early stages of the practice, because our mind is not yet developed to that. We can't simply use anatta to say to be free from any kind of a bad behavior that we got involved, or any kind of mistake that we have done because of our immaturity, because of our ignorance, or because of the craving. We might be involving with various different activities, maybe during our early stages, but we can't use anatta, the teaching of anatta, as an excuse. Rather, we become responsible for all those activities whenever we are doing those activities as a person, manifesting as an individual. So we have to be responsible for all those activities. In one sense, we can say we have to accept the kammasagata sammaditthi. We need to accept the correct view about the karma. But we don't need to stop there. We can further grow. And as we are growing, after a fair amount of vipassana practice, you may be able to understand the non-self. Say, for example, you are practicing dhatu manasikara, and as a result of the dhatu manasikara, the elements meditation, the understanding is really aimed at the non-self, the teaching of the non-self. Because all these different elements are behaving the way they want, and they are also not something substantial. They are also very much like energies, and their behavior is entirely beyond your control. And internally, inside, also there is no any core, anything substantial. So all that actually help us to understand this body doesn't have a self, doesn't belong to a self. It is not me. It's not a person. So if we have such kind of an understanding, then slowly, we can understand that whatever we call as someone else, my mother, my father, my daughter, my son, my wife, my husband, all these different characters, what I encounter throughout this world, so and so, this particular people, but they are also similarly empty. Like here you understood this particular body, what we call as my body, is also empty of a self and what belongs to a self. Now, inferentially, you can understand whatever outside available, that is also empty. So likewise, to all different aggregates, we can apply this teaching of emptiness or this teaching of the non-self, but we need to properly use it at proper time. We can't simply use it in a blind way as a panacea for everything or at a premature level. Rather, we need to arrive that understanding. We need to maturely arrive that understanding. Then we may be properly able to use that understanding. So this is important to point out in the particularly about the non-self teaching, and then actually when Banyananda Thero is taking us to another point related to the usage of concepts, and with respect to the Nagarjuna's kind of teaching, but we'll discuss that maybe later. And I stop here today, and now I open the session for questions. Yes, can hear.
Yeah. We have 7 questions today.
Right.
The number 1 of 7 is on mindful sitting. Dear Bhante, my sitting practice is mindfulness of the breathing. And once the breath fades away after establishing mindfulness, I watch the mind. I often observe how thoughts come and go. When the mind does not observe other sensations like pains, sounds, and body awareness. Usually some random thought comes to the center stage, show different variations. They linger around and slowly vanish into the blank space. Lately, during several sitting sessions, I have observed rapid vanishing of thoughts. Immediately, when they appear. This does not happen often, but in the midst of a sitting session in a random manner over 5 to 10 minutes. Thought of reporting to Bhante as this is something new I have observed under mindfulness. With metta, that is the end of the question.
Yeah, good. So basically allow it to happen. So slowly you are understanding that the thoughts are also impermanent. They are also transient. They can't stay for a long time. And previously we were thinking that thoughts are very strong and they belong to me, and every time I have to act according to them. They are quite important. I am responsible for them. So these are the kind of wrong perceptions we had with respect to thoughts. And also we might have thought about that there is a person who is thinking. So these are very interesting way explained in the Kalakarama Sutta. So with respect to thinking, probably we have given emphasis to the thoughts. We think that these thoughts belong to me. And through the thoughts, there is something or someone being indicated, represented, and we have given fairly important value to the content of the thought. And since thoughts are happening, or on the other hand, thinking happens, so there's an underneath belief that there is someone who is thinking. Now, these are very interesting, wrong misbelief, wrong views. But through the understanding, now slowly, you will understand, okay, my thoughts are coming and going. You can't depend on thoughts, and you can't even arouse your own thoughts, or you can't even control the thoughts. They quickly come and go. Even though you want them to stay, they simply go. Or even though you want them to rise, they don't arise. So likewise, even the non-self characteristic you may understand at the thoughts level, or the impermanent characteristics you may understand at the thought level. So basically the point is, now you lose the emphasis towards the thinking in a way. With respect to the thoughts, now you are not going to add unnecessary importance, because you know that they are quite transient. They are quickly coming and going. So therefore, I encourage you to continue the same practice, which will help you to maybe giving any emphasis to thinking. Rather, you maybe start appreciating the silence rather than giving much value to thoughts. So you may understand, okay, it may be wholesome thoughts, it may be unwholesome thoughts, doesn't matter. They are coming, they are rising, but they are going, they are passing away. That is a universal truth. That's a universal nature characteristic. And you are slowly understanding impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. using the Sankharakhanda, using the fabrications. Yeah.
Question number 2 of 7. Dear Bhante, I have heard recently that there has to be some connection in the body during our practice. Even we do Chittanupassana. When the breath fades away and the blank space comes up as the observation, can we assume that the slight awareness on the boundary of the observation space as the sign of the body connection, even though no specific part of the body is observable? Much merits for your service with metta. That's the end of the question.
You don't need to limit your consciousness to that. So actually, we are moving towards kind of a boundless experience. At the beginning, when we are doing Kayanupassana, slowly, you may have kind of a boundary to your experience, boundary to your conscious experience, to your mindfulness. But slowly, as you develop insights, so the body is very much like abandoned. You don't need to grasp or you don't need to even associate the body. So very much like you can't feel the body. Body become very much like not being able to feel. It has disappeared. You can't feel the body now. Very much like you are unconscious about the body. There may be a little signs telling that the body is living, but you are not supposed to purposely pay attention and try to figure out whether your body is all right or whether your body maintaining its parameters, perimeter, it's healthy, etc. So rather you continue the practice. So slowly, Kayanupassana will help us to free the mind from the body, free the mind from the whole Rupakhanda, the form aggregate. At that level, no point of talking about the conscious experience which is dependent on the body. Rather, the conscious experience is now independent of the body. It's entirely independent of the form aggregate. So that is the goal actually. So all these Satipatthana practices help us to be free from the 5 aggregates. Say for example, when you are practicing Kayanupassana, it helps us to free from the matter, free from the form aggregate, the materiality. So at that time, we don't need to find out the demarcations or the limitations or the boundaries of the body. It already have gone. Yeah.
Question number 3 of 7. This is a general question. Dear Venerable Sir, what is samahita, which we need to cultivate in the practice? Can this be done artificially, or is it something which should come naturally? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, if it is coming naturally, that is much better. And maybe it is one result of the practice. So samahita means you are able to maintain kind of an equanimity towards the vicissitudes of the life. Say whenever someone is praising, you are not being elated. Whenever someone is blaming, you are not crying. You are able to maintain kind of a samahita. You are able to maintain kind of an equanimous state of mind, a stable state of mind. Similarly, when you go through some gains, you are not elated. Whenever you encounter certain losses, still you are not being sort of depressed. You are able to maintain the samahita. You are able to maintain a fairly equanimous state of mind, a stable state of mind. And whenever, say, someone is encountering some kind of a pleasure, still you are able to maintain a kind of an equanimous mind. And even when the body is going through a certain amount of a pain, still you are able to maintain a stable mind. So likewise, we as human beings, we may have to go through all these ups and downs of the life, but the practice should be helpful for us to maintain that samahita, maintain that equanimous, stable state of the mind.
Question number 4 of 7. This is a general question. Dear Venerable Bhante, I have been practicing meditation for several years and appreciate your guidance on it. To manage my scattered mind during daily activities, I usually listen to Dhamma sermons. This helps me focus on Dhamma, and sometimes I also listen to other useful podcasts. I occasionally test myself by not listening to anything, just to observe the pattern of my thoughts. Instead of following a chain of related thoughts, as mindfulness helps prevent that, my thoughts come rushing in like a waterfall. I start feeling bored with a what's next kind of feeling. Then I notice it's time to get ready for MYA, and that makes me happy. My understanding is that because I practice meditation, I don't feel like talking to others as much. This change has happened naturally during my meditation journey. However, I still have a strong desire to engage in Dhamma-related activities. This means that while my mind still has cravings, they have shifted in a wholesome, kusala direction. Will this gradual transformation help guide my mind towards emptiness? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, definitely. So that's why, in a way, we are nurturing our mind. So previously, our mind being engulfed with some negative qualities, say bad habits and hindrances, defilements, so we are suffering. But now we are developing the opposite, correct, good, valuable qualities. So that is necessary. So that is what typically called as the bhavana, the development of the mind. So we are talking about the faculties, spiritual powers, enlightenment factors. Now, all these are very, very important, necessary, positive qualities we need to inculcate in the mind, cultivate in the mind. So that is quite necessary. And I think what you are doing is correct. Your understanding is also correct. And maybe a little bit of more reading or more practicing and all that are part of this. Probably you have heard about the Anugrahita Sutta, 5 supports. So we have to support our path through the sila, the morality. We need to support our path with the sutta, that is the knowledge, the teaching of the Buddha. We are referring, we are using, we are again and again investigating the suttas, again and again investigating the Dhamma, which is preached by the Buddha. So we are developing certain amount of understanding. And then the sakaccha, that means we participate in Dhamma discussions. So our understanding is growing, and if there are any doubts, those are abandoned. Sakaccha anugrahita. And then we are further developing the samatha and vipassana. Now all these 5 supports are necessary for proper development of the path.
Question number 5 of 7. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, what is the meaning of releasing the mind from all attachments? Is it the way one becomes a stream enterer? Or is it the final product of Soan Margapad? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Okay, I think I can connect with the Anapanasati Sutta to explain this. Now, if you are familiar with Anapanasati, let me see whether I have the document. So that it is easy for me to explain to you. So let me share it. So actually, some time back, we discussed this in the MYA session. So I am showing it again. So by the way, can you tell the question again?
Dear Bhante, what is the meaning of releasing the mind from all attachments?
Okay, fine. Now the point is, now say for example, assume that we are in the Kayanupassana. In the Kayanupassana section, so we are dealing here with the breathing and we are familiar with the breath. and you are able to understand whether it is long, whether it is short, whether you are experiencing the whole cycle of the breathing. And as a result of that, now the bodily formations are calming down. The breath is almost like disappearing. You can't find out whether it is the in-breath or out-breath, almost like it has become subtler. So likewise, at the Kayanupassana level, so the body being very much like calmed down, its gross sensations are reduced. There is no any torturing or any kind of friction. So the very much like the body has become very relaxed, very calm. Now, in a way, to some extent, you can say mind is not being influenced very much from the body. Mind is free from the body in a way. And now assume now you are at the Vedananupassana section. So you are developing Vedananupassana, and you are in the sense that as a result of the Anapanasati practice, you go through some sort of a rapture, maybe happiness, some pleasurable feelings, but you look at them properly, that they are also coming and going, they are also impermanent, they are also unsatisfactory, they are also non-governable, they are also non-self. So as a result of that, you are able to abandon them as well. They also disappear. You are not attached to them. You are not being carried away by them. You are putting them in at the proper perspective. So therefore, all feelings are also very much like calm down. And maybe now you are experiencing certain mental formations. Maybe kind of the perceptions. So that is also now properly you are handling. That also abandoned. Now the mind become fairly clear, clean. You are not being tangled to them. Your mind is free from even the perceptions. Your mind is free from even the feelings. Now we come to the Chittanupassana, where you allow the mind to little freely move, let it think. Now thoughts are coming and going. Thoughts are coming and going. But you understand their true nature. They are also arising. They are also passing away. You can't depend on them. They can't last for a long time. Now you are you understand their true nature. Now slowly, your mind is free from even thinking. Now no thoughts. Your mind is not dependent on thinking. Now we can say the mind is liberating. Now the mind is very much like freeing. So again, if I listen to your question, Chamila, so can you repeat the question again?
What is the meaning of releasing the mind from all?
Yeah, so when you are practicing now, as much as possible, don't keep your mind on the object, don't keep your mind on the body, not in the feelings, not in the thoughts, not in the perceptions, nowhere in a way. You are, as much as possible, you are freeing the mind, releasing the mind, releasing the mind. Yeah, I hope explanation is clear.
To separate questions, I'll read one after the other. So mindful walking. Dear Venerable Sir, I am new to walking practice. I follow all the guidance given by Nissarana videos. I can concentrate on my feet touching sensation mostly, about 90% of the time. Occasionally my mind drifts away. During walking, do not feel bodily sensations, but immediately after I stop, I feel bodily sensations inside my mouth as a starting point. That is the end of the walking report. Shall I read the sitting report as well?
Yes.
So this is the sitting report. During today's sitting, immediately after my immediately after I started to follow your guidance. Halfway through, I suddenly felt like heating my body and started sweating. Heart rate was very high and completely drifted away from your guidance, as all of a sudden feelings were more prominent than your guidance. Gradually back of my body started to cool down from back shoulders towards buttock. During that time, guided has stopped. I continued my meditation until the bell rang. Appreciate your guidance. Much merits. That's the end of the question.
I don't think much changes are necessary. So you are basically progressing. So let your mindfulness establish in the body, and various sensations are available. Various changes are going on. You are able to look at them properly, look at them objectively. You don't need to adhere to any of them. Let them naturally come and go. Let them naturally happen. You need to maintain kind of an open mind. You are ready to accept whatever happens in a non-judgmental way. Now you have come to that level. Okay, whatever either pleasurable happening, okay, that is also coming and going. Whatever little pains happening, that's also coming and going. So you are maintaining kind of a non-judgmental, fairly equanimous attitude towards any of these. And very much like your report is reaching that direction, and it's a matter of further continuing.
Question number 7 of 7. This is the last question. It's on the Dhamma sermon. Dear Bhante, is Ratavinita Sutta the basis of Visuddhimagga rather than the early discourses of the Blessed One? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, the Ratavinita Sutta is the basis for the Visuddhimagga. Very correct. So, the Ratavinita Sutta, on the other hand, explains some kind of a systematic approach towards the path. But we can't say this is the only path. Sometimes we might get mistaken, thinking that this is the only path. There may be different paths available. So Buddha has mentioned the Dhamma to the path to Nibbana in many different ways. So the approach of this systematic, one after the other, linear approach is one approach actually. So having Sila and then kind of a Ditti Visuddhi, Chitta Visuddhi, then Ditti Visuddhi, then Kanka Vitarana Visuddhi, Magga Magga Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. So likewise, a kind of a properly orderly way of explanation is one approach. But anyway, the Visuddhimagga taken it thoroughly, very much like emphasizing it, adding fair emphasis to it and explaining the whole path with respect to that. But we don't need to say it is the only path. There may be other approaches mentioned by the Buddha. Now, on the other hand, very much like putting, say, for example, the Satipatthana practice into this 7 stages may be a little difficult, because sometimes people expect when they are following a particular model to tally all other teachings into the same model. So we can't do that immediately, because there may be differences, there may be side tracks, which might be unique to a particular path. So different paths are available and different features are available in those different paths. And we need to appreciate those unique features in those particular paths. And the Ratavinita approach has its own unique nature, and we can appreciate that also. Similarly, giving emphasis, a value to the other paths as well.
So that is the end of the written questions for today, and it's just about time, and as is also during the program, I think we will end the prayer for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, Thero Sanlai.
Everyone.